He's Bob Pollock from the Extension Service with us here this morning. In the middle of winter, it's rare that we get calls for you, sir, but we'd like to, I know there's somebody out there thinking of a question that they'd like to ask you. I'd like to hear from them. 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. So today's February 1st. Good morning.
Wow, good morning.
It is the 1st of February, and we start to turn our hearts and minds toward the springtime of the year, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. It's still a bit off. But
a little bit, yes.
We're beginning to see the glimmer. Pitchers and catchers report on February 13th. That's the true sign of spring. So there are others, though, and we'll soon begin to look for them, won't we?
We sure will.
Yeah. The melting of the snow, the budding of the trees, and all of those things.
Yeah, the snow may melt in a couple days.
Yeah.
But then it could be back again.
57 degrees on Monday, mostly sunny skies. That's going to pick people up a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of the plants and things may not prefer to have that big of a temperature swing in a short period of time like that. But
well, that's the thing.
Just have to deal with it.
Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, they're predicting temperatures in the 50s. Sunday, 49. So that's going to be 4 days of 50-degree weather at the beginning of February. Would there be any adverse effects, or is that too short of a time span before it gets cold again?
Well, just these wide fluctuations is what tends to stress plants more, or where we might see later on some bud kill on plants that are more susceptible to that. Peaches, nectarines, things like that are marginally hardy here. The plant itself is hardy, but peach trees are a good example of a fruit that we love. But yes, they can be very prone to these temperature swings, whether it's going up or whether it's going back down. So we would like to have that happen over a longer period of time, but it usually doesn't work that way. Or not at all, just stay cold.
Yeah.
That's the best scenario, because they kind of winterize themselves, prepare for that. The fluid content in the cells change. We kind of call that antifreeze. That helps protect the water in the cells from freezing. And when we warm up, then we can lose some of that hardiness that they've gained. And then if we have a quick swing back again, colder usually, then that makes them, they're not prepared for that. The antifreeze isn't as thick, and so they're more susceptible to those cells, the water in the cells freezing, which then causes them to burst.
Yeah.
And that's not good. And then we'll get some dieback. And
plants are confused.
Yes.
At this time of year.
They're maybe not confused, but just not able to react fast enough to protect themselves completely.
All right. So that's something that we'll watch, and we'll see how long the warm temperatures last and what it will do for them. And there's a difference between warm and sunny and warm and rainy. And
yes.
I guess it's going to be warm and rainy for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So we'll watch all that unfold.
And we can sun scald is another thing that happens a lot of times during the winter, especially on a south-facing surface on tree bark. Maples are a great example of that. Like red maple has a thinner bark, especially when that tree is younger, and a lighter, a little bit of a lighter surface, but the sun shining on that, the temperature outside may be below freezing, but having that sunshine beat on that one side of the tree all day long warms up the cells enough, and the liquid in the cells enough, starts to activate a little bit, and then as soon as that sun goes away in the evening, then there's a quick cool down.
Yeah.
Because the temperatures are already below freezing. And so you can get that cellular death there. But it'll take months for us to be able to see that. And eventually what happens is that bark starts to dry down, crack, and then lift off. And so we have a wound there.
Okay.
But and a lot of times you can tell that happened after the fact.
Months after the fact.
Yes, by looking at the orientation. If it's a south-facing side, that's the side that's most susceptible to that type of damage.
Speaking of red maples, I have one in the yard that I mow underneath, but the branches are kind of low, and they're in the lowest branches need trimmed off now because I ain't as flexible as I once was to bend underneath those things. Is it better to do it once the warmer weather comes, or should I do it now when it's in a dormant stage? Or does it matter?
There's a lot of flexibility in timing of pruning. We try to avoid it when we're in really cold conditions like we are at the moment. Mm-hmm. Unless it's already dead wood or something like that, then that's not a big deal. We usually try to avoid that period in the spring when everything is leafing out. There's a lot of things happening in the plant, getting that energy moving from the root system where it's stored in the winter to enable those buds to open and have it leaf out. So that's usually a time frame there where we try to avoid that. The other thing is, and usually late summer, when before we get to fall, the plant's still growing. If we do it too late, then we can sometimes initiate some succulent growth on plants that, when we get a freeze, takes them out, kills that growth. So we usually try to avoid, that period of about a month in there before we get to when we're going to have a freeze.
I'm probably looking then at about the same time that I'll be trimming back and pruning the grape arbors, right before the growing season starts.
Yeah, things are still dormant, and
another month.
And size of the branch too. You said lower branches, depending on how large those are, that can be a little challenging because of the size of the wound that is made when you cut it off.
Yeah.
If it's a smaller branch, it will take a less number of years for the tree to grow over that cut surface and grow new cells over that. The bigger the limb, the longer that takes, and the more likely it is that there could be decay start to set in before the tree can grow new cells and close off that cut surface.
Okay.
So you take some risk there, removing large living limbs just because of that.
Okay. All right. So people thinking about their plants and trimming them and pruning them before the growing season comes. Not just yet, but not so far from now.
Yeah, and dead wood and things like that we can take out at any time because it is important to remove those limbs, because what if you don't, eventually they'll drop off, just like they do out in nature in the woods. But you have a much greater chance that there'll be some damage there, that it won't be able to wall it off, seal that off again with new growth, or for the period of years that branch stays there, or part of it drops off and you have a stub left. Oftentimes you can go out in the woods and look at that and see that wound growth trying to grow over that, but it has to grow out that dead stub of a branch that's there, so it takes much longer. And you can get decay already started back into the main trunk of the tree by not removing those branches in a timely manner.
We have spoken before about people who get to this time of the year and they're just so anxious to get outside and do something that when we get a melt like we're going to have over the course of this next 5 days or so, they might be tempted to get out there onto the lawns. You want them off of that lawn, don't you?
Yeah, we would want to minimize any kind of activity at this time of the year, especially if you get a muddy surface there. It does not take much activity on there to make a muddy mess.
And yet when you
have to clean up, then you'll have to even do more work to clean it up later. When
they see that the snow has melted and they can see all the mole tunnels there, and they're going to really want to get out there and battle the moles, but still not a good idea.
Yeah, there'll be time for that.
He's Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. We're talking about this not quite late winter, but coming soon. And Punxsutawney Phil will make his prediction tomorrow. You're not going, are you?
No.
Okay. Wouldn't think so. But one never knows.
I'm sure somebody will be there that can report on the activities.
Yeah. For those of us who have been trying to maintain our plants, our outdoor plants through the house through this winter, and have watched them and maybe had to pick off a few blackened leaves or things of that nature. Anything we need to do now as it gets closer or?
In observation is the key thing, just paying a little bit of attention instead of shoving them off to the side or forget about them, just observing them. That's just all part of the kind of integrated plant management, where we pay attention, we look, we observe, we look for maybe the color of the leaves, the health of the plant. Is it drooping? Are we not watering it enough? And especially when plants are near vents, heating vents and ducts, the soil can dry out fairly quickly, more so than you might think it would in the wintertime with lower light levels. So that can still happen. So you just kind of have to really watch that and gauge it, depending on the soil mix and the size of the pot and the plant itself. And some plants may just need a little bit more light if they're not doing real well. A lot of plants will slow down a bit during the winter just because we have shorter days, oftentimes a little cooler temperatures. We'll be maintaining in that 68 to 72 range, and so that can be a little cool for some of these tropical plants. So they do tend to kind of slow down a bit, so we don't need to be fertilizing them all the time like we do during the growing season when the days are longer and we have sunnier conditions.
And you've always been big on humidity, just putting an open pan of water there for them to draw from the air.
Yeah, because in most cases, unless we have a humidifier on the furnace or some other way to add moisture in the air, we're going to be drier than we will be during the growing season months. So just having a little bit better environment there for them, they'll look better, do better, be healthier plants.
All right.
And do better for you. You'll enjoy them more.
Very good. We got the whole way through the segment, waiting for spring to come.
Yes.
We made it.
And it's still snowing.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
The voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1 FM.